This video series on how to deploy Django on shared hosting will be divided into 3 parts. The first video is to install Django on shared hosting using Cpanel's terminal feature. The second video is how to install Django on shared hosting without using the terminal. The third and final video is installing Django on your local computer and then synchronizing it with the Django that is already installed on the shared hosting account. And lastly, we'll reach our main goal of deploying Django to shared hosting. As for computer, we're going to use computer with the Windows and Mac operating system. First, we must distinguish between installing and deploying, as the two terms are frequently used interchangeably. Django install includes the setup frame and main system as well as the supporting distribution files. So installing Django means that we are setting up only the main system as well as the framework supporting file as they are, without our files or working scripts. All script and working files should be created on the local computer, because working on your local computer is generally faster than working on the hosting. Also, if there's an error or a mistake, it's easier to trace them using tools like VS Code, Winmerge, and many more. Try to run it on localhost using run server. After everything is fine and there are no problems, then we'll deploy it. That's what deployment is for. Essentially, deploying Django means uploading our file and scripts that we already made on the local computer to the host server. Let's open our hosting. Here I'm using the web server with Cpanel as the control panel. Inside my Cpanel hosting, there are Python and terminal. This is Python. And this is terminal. Terminal can be used to write Linux scripts and commands, because the operating system on this host is Linux operating system. Besides being able to enter Linux commands directly in the terminal, we can also enter them remotely via the SSH facility. Now, we're going to install Django Python on the domain dynotes.xyz. Let's take a quick look to my file manager. The files for dynotes.xyz domain that the general public can access are located here, since dynotes.xyz is an add-on domain on my primary domain. As you can see, index.html is the only file present. I have prepared this HTML file before. This HTML contains the following information. Simple HTML file that reads, "This is dynotes.xyz with normal access." It's just a simple HTML file. If dynotes.xyz is entered into the browser, this is the result. Now returning to Cpanel, let's install our Python. From the menu, choose Python. Click Create Application after entering the Python web application dashboard. This is the forms that we have to fill out in the form of parameters and option to install Django. There is a choice of option for the version of Python to be installed. There are also an application root, application URL, application startup file, and application entry point. The first thing that we do is to go to URL application. Because if we have more than one domain here, we frequently forget which domain we should install Python and Django on, which could lead you to install it on the wrong domain. We select the domain on which to install Python in this URL application. I will choose dynotes.xyz. Then on the Python version options, select the option as needed. In this example, we can choose to use Python version 3.5.9, Python 3.7.12, or 3.9.12. Try to have the local Python version lower than the hosting version or at the same level as the hosting version. Then we fill in the input parameters for the application root. This will be the name of the folder outside of public HTML, so it will not be accessible to the public. This will also be the name of the folder in the virtual environment. Let's say Django test. We only need to fill in these two input forms. The other two will be filled in automatically by the system. If that's done, then we can now start installing. Click the create button and then wait for a few moments. And done. Let's take a look at the result. Type dinotest.xyz on the browser. And yes. And it will be the same. The stop app and restart buttons are located here. So, Python is an add-on for the Apache web server, in contrast to PHP, which is pre-installed and the PHP interpreter runs as soon as the Apache starts. Let's try clicking the stop app button first. Python is no longer active. Let's now recheck the dinotest.xyz domain. We received the index.html version same as before we installed Python. Now let us restart Python once more. Let's check by clicking the open button again. We'll see that Python is running again. If nothing has changed, open the setting for your browser, clear the cache, and then reload dinotest.xyz or press the open button. Python should now show up again. Now reaching this point, don't feel satisfied yet. Let's dig a little further to learn more about what happens when you install Python. Let's open the file manager again. Inside the home folder, there's an additional folder called test.django. Let's take a look at our Python installation parameters again. Application root, test.django. Let's open the contents of the test.django folder. And this is the content. There's an empty public folder. And there's also a temporary folder which only contains one file and it is still empty. Then there are also two files. One file is a logger or log file for errors, and an important and main file for Python, a file called passenger.wsgi.py. This file is not for Django, it is only for Python. We won't require this file once Django has been installed. Let's once more take a look at the Python installation dashboard in Cpanel. Passenger.wsgi.py is the application startup file, which means it's the first file that's read and checked by the system Python. Let's take a closer look at the content of the passenger.wsgi file. Its contents are none other than the Python language that we already know. The top two lines are import the operating system module and system module. Then there's also the application function declaration. I'll highlight here and we'll take a quick look at the Python installation dashboard in Cpanel. Here it is, application entry point. So when Python first runs, it will first check the passenger.wsgi.py file, then execute the application function in the file. Now we can do a little bit experiment with this passenger.wsgi.py file while practicing our understanding on Python language. This file contains a function named application. This application function executes commands which will eventually return a variable, namely response. This response is not important. It is not a reserved word or method, it is merely a variable that contains the join of the two previous variables, namely message and version. Now, why can only just the message that is returned, you might ask? Well, why not? Let's try doing that. Let's delete the response and version variable, and then change the version parameter inside return. Let's change it into a message. Now we change the contents of the message variable as anything that we want. Let's say this is Python, not Django. then save. Type again dynotest.xyz in the address bar of your browser, and as you can see, it already changed. Now, don't be hesitant to experiment like this to better understand about Django Python. Alright developers, after we installed Python, there are still two additional directories that have changed, namely the virtual env folder in the home directory and the dynotest.xyz folder in the public HTML folder. Let's take a look at the dynotest.xyz folder inside the public HTML folder. This is the folder, dynotest.xyz. It appears that one more file has been added to this folder, namely htaccess. The htaccess file contains the server configuration as well as the first filter for HTTP requests that go to the dynotest.xyz folder. When installing Python, htaccess is added to the public domain folder, in this case dynotest.xyz. Let's open it and see what's inside. And these are the HTTPS configuration and access filter. So, HTTP request access to dynotest.xyz will be directed to the configuration of the passenger app root and Python. Let's see what happens when we try deleting this configuration and then saving. We enter again HTTP request dynotest.xyz. This is dynotest.xyz with normal access. Again, what is shown is the content of index.html as if Python isn't installed on this domain. If we restore the contents of htaccess as before, then Python is back to running normally. So the conclusion is that once Python is installed on our web server, it will overwrite the public domain folder. In this case, it's dynotest.xyz. Any files in the dynotest.xyz folder will be bypassed and won't be processed. The server system will immediately check the Python configuration and run the function application in the passenger WS. The last change that we'll see in the home directory is an addition of a new folder called virtual env, short for virtual environment. Django requires a virtual environment or environment that functions as though all the forking files and related Python and Django scripts are present there. We'll have a better understanding of how this virtual environment functions once we start installing Django later. This is the virtual env folder. Inside this folder, there will be another folder with the same name as the application root folder that we discussed earlier, namely in this case, test Django folder. The test Django folder in this virtual environment has entirely different content from the previous test Django folder. This time, the test Django folder also includes system Python files in the form of script files and bin files, as well as the Python package folder containing Python modules. As you can see, the folder also clearly displays the installed version of Python. Bin files and Python scripts will be saved to this folder. Then we see this is the package Python package folder. Later on, Django will also be saved to the package folder. Since Django is actually just one of Python module. Before we install Django, I hope my fellow developers here first grasp the basic ideas of installing Python on a web server up to this point. Now it is time to install Django. Django may be installed on shared hosting with Cpanel in two different ways. The first way is to use the terminal facility, and the second way without using the terminal. We return to the dashboard for the Python installation. There is a bar with the following text directly beneath the dashboard's main menu. Enter to the virtual environment. To enter the virtual environment, run the command, and followed by a Linux command script. Click, and a pop-up will appear saying copy to clipboard. It means that we can just pass the Linux command straight to the terminal. The next step is to access the terminal's features, or you can use the search box. After entering the terminal, then we right-click and paste. The Python installation dashboard's main bar's Linux command has been copied to the terminal. The command that we copied actually consists of two commands. The first command is this. This is the command to activate the virtual environment. As we discussed earlier, the Django Python framework requires a virtual environment. This virtual environment must be activated before installing Django and its accompanying components. The intention is for the installation flow to know which files and folders will be connected to one another. The virtual environment doesn't need to be activated again after Django has been installed. When Django is already running, there is no need for the virtual environment to be active. Then the second command is this. This is the command syntax for changing directories. So after we activate the virtual environment, we immediately move to the directory where our working folder is located. Just enter. Test Django 3.7 in brackets will appear on the far left. This is a sign that the Test Django virtual environment is active. When we see, this is our working directory Test Django. Let's see here. Virtual env, Test Django, bin, and this is the activate command we just ran. This bin folder contains commands or Python scripts for various purposes. So when we type a Python script in the terminal, the script is actually here. PIP is short for Private Installer Program. We are installing Django using this PIP program. Then type this command line, pip install Django. Now we'll wait as it is installing. Bing bong! Django is successfully installed. Let's take a look again on File Manager to see what happened after we installed Django. Let's check our working folder first, Test Django. There seems to be no changes. The contents of the passenger WSGI py file also haven't changed. Right. Then check dynotest.xyz folder in the public HTML folder. Nothing changed here also. Last, let's check the Test Django folder inside the virtual env folder. As it turns out, there's a new file inside the bin folder, which is Django admin, which wasn't there before. This Django admin script will be used every time we make Django project. Let's see what happened to the side packages folder inside the lib subfolder. As we can see, we get a couple of new folders. Which one of them is the Django folder itself? Django is put on par with other packages or models, which confirms my previous comment that Django framework is essentially just another of a Python model. And at this point, we just finished installing Django Python on web hosting. Next, we can start installing Django locally on the computer until it reaches the Django project skeleton, and then we deploy it to the hosting. We know that in many tutorials on the web and on other YouTube channels that installing Django on shared hosting doesn't end here, but it continues with Start project. In the final part of this tutorial series, I'll demonstrate how to properly and efficiently install Django up to the project stage on hosting. Follow this video series through to the end.